Hello, everybody, and welcome to Comically Incompetent. My name is Doug. This is the podcast where each week we take a movie, we take a beer, and we talk about it. This week we are continuing our Indiana Jones quadrilogy review series with special guest, my dad. Dad, how you doing?
Hello.
So we are going to be doing The Last Crusade, the last good one of the Indiana Jones series.
The best one. I'm going to say it right now.
All right.
The best one of the Indiana Jones series.
You're going to have to defend that in a few minutes. So for this week, before we get into the show, our beer is called Do Stuff Together. Get it into focus here. I thought it worked because there's, the scene where they're on the bike together. They're doing stuff together. Indiana's dad, which also works because you and I are doing the show. You're my dad.
That's right.
Drawing parallels here. So we'll talk more about the beer at the end of the show. It's from Mikkeller Brewing Company, which we've had on the show a couple times before. So we'll get more on that at the end. But yeah, I think getting into the movie, I mean, why do you say it's the best one?
So it had, the first one set it up. The second one went way off to a different tangent. So this is really the sequel to the first one is really what this is.
It definitely feels like it, yeah.
I just thought they did a great job. Every scene had something, unique and interesting about it. There was, a number of different chase scenes, and we'll get into all that. I think in one movie they had more different kinds of chase scenes than any movie, right?
Yep.
There was a boat chase scene, a train chase scene, a car chase scene, a plane chase scene, a tank chase scene, a horse chase scene, right? So
action, like nonstop action.
Nonstop action. They went back to the standard formula of an Indiana Jones movie with a beginning that was, fantastic.
Yep. Young Indiana Jones.
They had the young Indiana, so they explained a whole bunch of things that, were sort of questions that you had. And then, of course, you add in Sean Connery, who did a fantastic job in this movie, the late, great Sean Connery. It just, it put it all together. They had good villains. They had a great quest they were after, the Holy Grail, right?
Yeah.
So it was just all in all, just a fantastic movie that, one was great, two kind of was very different, but three got back on, which gave us fantastic hopes for four, right?
False hopes for four.
No, we'll talk about that in the next show.
But to start off, this movie starts with a young River Phoenix playing a young Indiana Jones.
So River Phoenix's young Indiana Jones, correct?
Which, phenomenal introduction, great way to bring in, kind of like giving you a little, it reminds me a lot, you haven't seen it, but it reminds me a lot of in the third Lord of the Rings movie, you get an introduction to who Gollum was before he became Gollum in the movie. So it kind of reminds me of that. You get a little bit of an introduction of a character that you know and showing you who they were before, what brought them to this point. It shows why he's afraid of snakes, how he has the cut on his chin.
Explains everything. Where he got his hat from.
Yep.
Where he got the scar on his chin. Why he's afraid of snakes.
Yeah. Which is funny the scar chin, because that wasn't an Indiana trait. That was a thing Harrison Ford had that they still wrote in.
They carried it through. But there's all sorts of neat symbols and pictures and stuff. If you look real closely at every scene, there's sometimes there's pictures in the background on a mantle or something, and it's a picture from movie one or movie two,
Or even we'll get to this more in the scene, but when they're going through the underground tunnels in Italy, and she's like, "What is this?" And he's like, "The Ark of the Covenant."
Right.
She's like, "How'd you know?" And he's just like, "Trust me." But yeah, a lot of good references, a lot of fun things. They brought back John Rhys Davies as Sala, which I really liked. He's a great character.
Yep.
And I think they kind of dove in a little more of Marcus Brody's character, and probably one of the funniest...
He was great in this, yeah.
Yeah, I say probably one of the funniest, hard cuts to a character I've ever seen, so I want to get into that. But starting at the beginning, we have young Indiana Jones. We could learn a lot about him, and he's going over after this cross. Was it the Cross of Coronado?
Uh-huh.
And I like the introduction of finding out who this... I like that he hasn't really changed. His teenage version was just as confident, just as...
Right.
Go-getter as Indiana Jones is that we know later on that Harrison Ford portrays him. And you get a little bit of an introduction to Sean Connery and their relationship of how he's kind of a hard-ass and he's...
Well, he's a professor into his his searches and his quest, and he didn't pay much attention to Indiana, right?
Yeah. Well, we learned Henry Jones Jr.
Yes, Henry Jones Jr.
Because he calls him Jr. So they go on this quest. They're told that Indy's told that his dad has been kidnapped, and this guy says he was looking for the Grail. So I need you to go out and get the rest of this stone tablet and find your dad along the way.
Yeah, yes.
Basically.
Yeah, so right, so the first scene with the Coronado Cross is Indiana Jones effectively on his first real attempt to go after an archaeological find, only to get beat by this other guy who sort of becomes his inspiration and where he gets the hat from and his whole sort of demeanor. This guy was sort of Indiana Jones before Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
right?
he was the leather jacket, the hat, the confidence,
and he becomes sort of his inspiration. And then they cut away to now Indiana Jones as an adult going back to get that cross that he lost when he was a teenager and get it back. But then he is brought in by a collector of antiquities to go find a quest for the Holy Grail on the premise that his father has been kidnapped and he has to go find him.
Which, as far as this movie was, up for some Oscars, but as far as the editing goes, I love that cut where you see young Indy, the guy puts the hat on him, and the hat goes down, and then it cuts to the hat going back up, and it's Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones on the boat. That was a great piece of editing, just phenomenally done.
Great, Indiana Jones scenes, with the fights and the first one starts out on the boat there, and then the boat explodes and all that stuff. So they just did this movie very, very well, and they incorporated in the Indiana Jones type things we like to see. Then they brought back the same as in movie one, the Nazis are the bad guys.
Yeah,
and in this one he actually has an encounter with Adolf Hitler, of all people.
Which is very interesting to see, because the first one they talked a lot about Nazis, but this one was delving into Germany and going into the lion's den.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting. So he goes on the adventure to go get the Grail, which they're going to meet at Dr. Schneider once they get to Italy, because that's their first clue. They think that the rest of that tablet is in Italy. And so they go and they find out, the woman, Dr. Schneider, and Indy immediately goes into Indiana mode and starts hitting on her.
Yes.
The second they
she
get
becomes the love interest of this movie.
For the first half.
But this is the first time the love interest is on the opposite side, right?
Yeah, which I like that in this one too. Marcus Brody goes along on the adventure, because before he gives Indy what he needs and sends him off onto the adventure, whereas Marcus is there and he's in Italy. He's helping them search for where X marks the spot.
Well, he kind of becomes the bumbling.
I love it. I love that. Yeah.
There's a great scene where they capture Indiana Jones and Schneider, and they're after this book, and the book that his dad created,
the Grail Diary. The
Grail Diary is sort of the map to get to find the Holy Grail and what you do when you find it, right? And they capture Indiana Jones and Schneider. They're trying to get the book, and he says, "No, I've given it to Marcus Brody, and he's disappeared. He will blend in. You will never see him.
He speaks 15 different languages.
15 different languages. He's, and then they cut to him, and he's roaming in some Moroccan town or something with, looks completely out of place, completely lost. And
does anyone speak English? He's just bumbling around. He has no idea what's going on. I love that cut. That's one of my favorite pieces of this movie. He did a great job in this one. Yes, they're in Italy. I like they go into that library, and they have another. This was very comedic. This one. They have the scene where they're going to break a hole in the ground, and it's right when the guy stamps the books, and he's looks at the stamp, and then does it again, and he thinks it's him.
I mean, the whole library scene is great because the way they laid it out, even though we know it's not real, it made it somewhat believable.
Yeah.
But then, just the little details are what make the difference. When they go under the library, and down through the whatever those things are underneath the catacombs underneath the library to find the rest of that tablet. He makes a comment when they go down there. It's filled with liquid, and he said it's petroleum.
Yeah.
He makes a comment. I should just sink a well here and retire for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah. I like. Then there's all those rats down there, and he's like,
"Rats.
My dad never got this far." And she's like, "How do you know?" He's like, "'Cause rats." His dad, just as Indy's afraid of snakes, his dad's afraid of rats.
Right.
And they go in. They find the shield that has the rest of the, writing on the tablet writing on it. And that's when those guys who we kind of know are following them, we don't really know what's going on, we just know they're following him, set fire to the thing. They have to...
Well, they light the petroleum.
They light the petroleum
yeah.
up. Which then they go under, and this whole thing of him flipping over the tomb and getting underneath it, and then they make it out, which is, I think, probably then leads to probably my favorite chase scene in the movie.
In the boats?
In the boats.
Speedboats, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're being chased by this group of freedom fighters that are trying to stop these explorers from finding the Holy Grail and desecrating the Holy Grail, right?
Yeah. They're Grail protectors is
yes.
the whole thing. They're going to stop anyone on the quest to find the Grail. And he ends up being a good guy, that guy, which we see him later, unfortunately, dies in that later scene. But, yeah, him and Indy have this great fight on the boat where Schneider's driving the boat and he's like, they're coming up to the two boats and he's like, don't go between them. And she's like, go between them. And then she starts driving. That's a great scene.
Yep. Yeah, no, fantastic scenes. It didn't, it was great stunts and everything. It seemed true to life and you really got into it.
It never drags at any point. There's never a moment in the movie where you're like, all right, let's get going here. Why is nothing happening? It's always, and even when they are talking, it's important and it's funny and it's like everyone's really good. Everyone had chemistry on that set and it's great.
Yep, and then they do sort of the typical Indiana Jones stuff. They, they do the little map and they start flying to the next place, right? So they leave Italy in search of now going to where the Holy Grail. They're sort of following along with the book.
The Grail Diary.
The Grail Diary.
Yeah, which is then where they get to Germany, right? And they get to like this castle.
They go to Germany They go to Germany because that's where his dad.
Yeah,
they've held his dad.
Because the guy who was like the Grail protector, once everything's resolved with their fight, he says that he tells them where his dad is.
Yep.
So they go to that castle in Germany.
And it turns out the guy that originally kind of brought him on to go find this, turns out he's working for the Nazis.
Yeah.
And so, they're in some castle in Germany, and he shows up to the castle, finds his dad, and that's where we first get introduced to his dad.
Sean Connery's
character.
Before that, there's that scene where they're like, he has like the disguise, so he pretends to be like that tapestry viewer.
Yep.
He puts on like the Scottish accent.
Yes.
And it's like, if you're Scottish lord, then I'm Mickey Mouse.
That's right.
A great Disney reference in there.
But he gets into the castle, finds the dad, who's being held, and then of course the Nazis find them.
But a great introduction to Sean Connery's character.
Yes.
And he breaks through the window, and his dad smashes him over the head with the vase, and he's worried about the vase. He's like, oh
yeah.
He's
Indiana
fake.
Jones thinks he's worried about him, but he's worried about the vase, and he goes, oh, thank God it's a fake.
Yeah, he's like, oh, thank God. And he's like, thinks he's talking about him. He's like, I'm all right. And Dad's like, it's fake. And then shows him why it's fake. And yeah, that was great. And I also like the line where Indy's like, why'd you hit me over the head? And he's like, because I thought you were one of them. He's like, they use the doors.
That's right. And then he finds out that Schneider is actually working for the Nazis. Mm-hmm. So they end up with the book. And then they capture Indiana Jones and his dad. They tie him up in this room in the castle. Yeah. Which turns out, so they try to figure out how to get out of this, being tied up so they could escape. And I think Indiana Jones had a lighter or something. So they try to light the ropes on fire to burn the ropes, but the dad ends up lighting the whole room on fire.
Yeah, which is great.
So they decide the only place to hide is in the fireplace where it's safe, and then the fireplace turns out to be a revolving wall into the command center for the Nazi headquarters.
Yeah, it's very like Young Frankenstein. They spin around and then they're sitting there, and then they spin around. They're like, you see them turning, and they watch and they go by.
But it's a great scene because there's a lady soldier in there. When they turn around, she kind of looks at them, and they look at her, and they all smile, and there's this giant pause. And they smile, like, are we okay? And then she just yells out, right?
Yeah, starts screaming.
And then there's this whole thing where they're revolving around and they're trying to, So it's a great scene.
Yeah, which then they escape from there. And, that whole thing is, which in that scene was where we talked about with Marcus Brody's character.
Yep.
When they're in there. So then they go and they escape, which is then, Indy goes, he's like, gonna let the boats loose, so they
find a secret stairway. Yeah. The dad sits on a chair and somehow
another
comedic thing. A lot of funny stuff. They find it. They get down. They get outside now, and now they're trying to escape. And that's when they get into the sidecar and motorcycle with the dad in the sidecar,
which is another good chase scene. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it's very reminiscent of like Return of the Jedi when they're being chased through the on Endor, which I don't think you've seen Return of the Jedi.
No.
It's I don't know if they meant it. It's very reminiscent of that. Another great chase scene in the sidecar.
Yep, the motorcycles
yeah.
and the sidecar and the fights, everything. I mean, just fantastic chase scenes. And then they get away. They end up at a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And they have to decide, are they going to go
save Marcus, or are they going to go to get the Grail or the diary back?
To get the diary back. So they decide to go to Berlin to get the diary back.
Well, Indy wants to go save Marcus, but his dad's saying that they need to get the diaries. Yep. And there's that whole dialogue, I think a great introduction of like the father-son dynamic that they have. Because we've seen it a little bit, but this is their first one-on-one, not an immediate danger conversation that they get to have, which I think is a really fun conversation.
Now, is this where No, I guess not. This isn't where the plane... That doesn't start. No. So you go into Berlin.
But they have to get on the blimp.
They have to get on the blimp. Is that when they leave Berlin?
They're trying to get the diary, so they go back to Berlin to get on the blimp.
Yeah, so they go into Berlin. That's where they have the run-in with Adolf Hitler.
No, I think that's
No, that's in Berlin. Because it's the diary, right? So he gets the diary, and then they're trying to leave, and...
That's true. So yeah, we gotta go over the Adolf Hitler scene though.
Bumps into Adolf Hitler, who autographs the diary.
Which I thought was interesting because they're burning the books, and at that whole thing he has with Schneider before it happens, where she's saying, "I don't agree with the swastika, I want the Grail." She's like, "I'm not a Nazi because of what they believe in. I'm a Nazi because they're going for the Grail, and I want the Grail."
Right.
Which was an interesting part. Which then he says, "It doesn't matter what you're going for. You're still part of them. You're horrible."
Right.
And they have that great exchange. Then he goes to leave. He has the diary back from her. Yeah, and then he bumps into Hitler. And then, I like that he signs it like an autograph.
There's this again, a pause.
Yeah,
like,
long
what's
pause.
going to happen? And then he just takes his book and signs it like he's, Cinderella at Disneyland or something. He signs the book, which is just a classic scene. And then I think that's when they go to the blimp to leave, which is another great scene.
Yeah. And then, because
they're... A blimp. I mean, who thought of it?
Yeah. Because they're about to... They're like, okay, we're finally out of here. And that's when Indy says, is like, you can relax now, Dad. Like, we're on our way out. And he's like, I'll relax when Germany's behind us.
Right.
Which is when the soldiers that have been chasing them come onto the blimp. And like that, Indy goes and he puts on the jacket and he's like pretending to ask for tickets. Throws the guy out the window. He's like, no ticket. And all the passengers start running to get the tickets. It was a great... I mean, everything in this movie is filled with like great comedic timing, which is funny because I feel like the first two didn't have... They had comedic elements, but this was like...
Well written, great timing, fantastic acting, great characters. That guy that played the German Nazi that was trying to get them was a great character. Just everything was perfect for this movie.
Yeah, and the blimp ends up they get away. The blimp starts.
The blimp thing was really cool. I mean, you kind of got this inside look into. Travel in Nazi Germany in the late 1930s, early 1940s, when blimps were actually ways of traveling. I mean, where we live, I don't know if you've ever been aware of this. Where we live,
the Goodyear blimp.
Well, the Goodyear blimp is parked not too far over by where you used to live.
Yeah.
But also in Tustin, up the road from us here off the 5, those two giant blimp hangars. That's where they used to park blimps.
And have those been there for...
Those have been there since the 1930s and 40s.
Oh, I didn't actually know that part.
That used to be what was called the Tustin Marine Base, and they used to park blimps in those hangars. Those are, I read an article on them, the largest wooden structures in the world.
Oh, really?
Those two blimps.
Oh, wow.
That's why...
15 minutes down the road from
It's no longer a base. They've built homes around it, but they've left these two gigantic...
Yeah.
Don't know what to do with them, but they don't want to turn them down because they're historical...
That's true,
buildings.
It's funny how those were like what you're saying, the naval base, but now there's like a Costco 30 feet from one of them. It's really...
Yeah, exactly.
But that blimp scene is fantastic, and even like I don't know if it was CGI or how they did it, but whatever the technology using, it held up relatively well for being however old this movie is.
Yeah. For
the technology that they had at the time, which I mean, it's not an old movie by any means, but it's still like it worked really well with what they did. And also then another great scene. So then they get on the plane, and I think one of my favorite comedic moments.
There's like a life plane, like a lifeboat on a ship. That there's a plane that you could use off of the blimp, and that's how they escape the blimp.
Yeah. So my favorite comedic moment is that there's the gun on the back, and the dad's like, and he's like, shoot him. So then the dad Sean Connery starts shooting, and he shoots off the back of the plane.
Yeah.
And he's like, son, they got us. That was great. I love that part. I never really seen Sean Connery in a whole lot before, but I don't know. I don't think he was. Was this like his first like funny role? Like, I know
I'm
like
trying
Hunt
to
for Red
think of
October.
Sean Connery movies. They're always serious. I mean, obviously he was James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond.
For a number of years. The Hunt for Red October.
Another serious movie.
A lot of serious cop type movies and that kind of stuff. But I don't think he was ever
he just seemed to have
a
fun with
comedic
this.
actor that I can remember.
Yeah, he seemed to have a lot of fun doing this movie, which I think helped the character be such a great character that he looked like he was having fun with it. So then the character seemed to be a lot of fun. So then they have that great chase scene, and then he lands. He can't land. He's like, I can fly, but I can't land. So then they crash into this poor like farmer's house.
Right.
Steal his. They steal his car.
His car or something. Yeah.
Yeah, which then I like that they're going in the tunnel, and the pilot follows him in. His wings break off, and he's like sliding.
Yeah, so they're being chased by these Nazi warplanes.
Yeah.
Trying to shoot them, and another great, fantastic scene. I mean, these are all-time cinema great movie scenes, right? Where they drive through a tunnel thinking they'd get away from these planes that are chasing them. The pilot then flies into the tunnel. The tunnel's not wide enough, so it breaks the wings off, and he goes sliding into the tunnel, in this plane with no wings now, sliding alongside the car. And then there's this great scene where he looks down on them, and they're going alongside each other, and then the plane explodes. Right?
Yeah, which I'm curious. Did he think that was gonna work? In that pilot's mind, did he think, I got him now?
Who knows? It was just a
a great scene.
It was a fantastic scene. The fact that they came up with that scene, and then the way they played it out, and then made it look so realistic and everything. It was just fantastic. And then the second plane's trying to get them. They're pretty much caught now. They're on a beach.
Yeah.
They're pretty much caught, and this is where the dad sort of chimes in. The only way they are able to escape is he takes his umbrella that he's carrying, and he shoos a bunch of birds that fly up into the plane and get into the propeller of the plane, make the plane disabled, and the plane crashes into a mountain, and now they've gotten through that chase.
They did a good job in this movie of giving these like villains these weird but original deaths of like deaths you don't either are now copies of this movie or things you've never seen before.
Right.
Like it was like I don't think I've seen that shtick of like having the birds fly up into a movie like that as a way of getting a pilot like that in a long ever before.
I mean, that's what I'm saying with this movie. It's like one great scene after another as you just continue to watch it. I mean, this is one of those you can watch over and over and over again, and I hate watching movies over and over again.
Yeah. No, I know you do. So then after that, right? Then they go, and is this when they meet up with Sala and Brody? Or no? So then we get the scene of, so we kind of jumped over this. So we have Brody. Sala finds Brody. He's all lost where he's supposed to be, trying to with the diary. So then the Germans go to get Brody, and Sala's like, "Oh yeah, get my papers." She's like, "Let me just go run." And he's like, and Brody has no idea. He's like, "What do you want me to do?" He's like, "No, let me just look at run." And he's like,
they're in Morocco or something. But then anyway, Brody falls into the hands of the Nazis
because Sala's like, hide in here, and he turns to fight, and then that's when these two guys go put at the back of it wasn't a building, it was a car. Right. Put the back of the car, and
so
the car
now
tries
Indy
with
and his dad are chasing. They're trying to save Brody, but at the same time they're still chasing after the Grail.
Yeah.
So they end up in the same place where the Nazis are with Brody, and then that's where the whole tank chase scene, which is another fantastic.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, maybe 10, 15-minute chase scene.
It's not even, it's funny because tanks don't go fast. It's not a chase. It's more like an intricately done and like fight scene because now they're fighting on the tank.
Right.
Indy's hanging from the side. And they're trying to scrape him off with the rocks.
I mean, we could just spend an hour just talking about that scene. First off, this tank that they had was just amazing. I don't know if it was CGI'd in or what.
No, that's real. There's the tank there.
And they've got this just odd tank, right? And then you have this scene where Brody and the dad are inside the tank, and Indiana Jones trying to get him out of the tank, but he's on a horse.
Yep.
He tells Sala, get horses, don't get camels. But Sala wants to go get camels because, free camels, right?
But it's because they destroyed his brother-in-law's car with the camels. So he's like, I need to pay him back somehow. And he gets like 6 camels, and he's what are you doing with the camels?
So you got that going on. They have a great scene. I mean, Indiana Jones gets stuck. His strap on his bag
satchel
or
thing,
something gets stuck on the tank, and he's getting dragged along. And then there's great fight scenes on the tank. and then there's a scene where his dad and Brody are inside the tank.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, they're sort of helping from the inside for this whole fight thing that's going on. But just a fantastic scene, and they make it out of all of that.
Yeah. And then so Indy's fighting on the tank. The tank goes over the edge, and they all think that Indy died in the tank because they watch it go down and it explodes. Yeah. And then they're all like mourning him, and he's kind of crawling back up the hillside. He looks all like disheveled and dizzy. And then they all kind of slowly turn and look at him as he's standing behind them.
That's right.
But yeah, that scene is fantastic. There's not a whole lot of CGI, I feel like, involved in there. They probably shot the stuff in the tank separately from outside the tank, but still, they had a tank there. And driving that tank around the middle of the desert, that was
it was
crazy.
Believable, whatever it was. It was believable, whatever it was. But they did the great tank scene. They basically escape that, and then I think they go to wherever that is where they go. It's this beautiful temple built into the side of a mountain.
Which, that's a real place. There's no inside to it in real life.
Right.
But that exterior is a real place.
Yep.
Which, that was something...
I think I looked it up once years ago.
Yeah.
You're right. It is someplace, maybe, I don't know where it's at, Tunisia or something, but it's somewhere.
Yeah, that is there is no inside. Like, there's a door, but it's all blocked off, like whatever cave in, or they never finished building it, whoever was building it, whatever. But yeah, that's a place, which then they obviously build a facade, so they go in, and they're sending people in, and they're just getting their heads are getting chopped off and rolling back.
It's like in Indiana Jones, the first scene, the first movie, the first scene where you got to get past all the booby traps and tests and everything to get to this. So now they're effectively trying to get to the Holy Grail.
Yeah,
right?
Which Indy says he's not going to go. So then to give him some inspiration, they shoot Sean Connery's character.
Yeah,
so that way Indy goes through to get the Grail.
Let's remember, they meet up with the Nazis now, the guy that hired him and Schneider, and they meet up with them, and now they're all there.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, they've got the dad, whatever, they've got them hostage, and now they're all trying to get to the Grail, and you're right, they shoot his dad to basically make Indiana go get the Grail to save his dad.
Which, then there's the 3 tests, only the penitent man shall pass.
That's right.
So then Indy learns duck.
All this was from the book that his dad had put together. He had all the pieces, he just hadn't, he had to get it all together, right?
Yeah, well, there's the whole thing of, when they're on the blimp, and Indy's dad shows him, like, these are the 3 tasks. The Indy's like, well, what does it mean? He's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out when we get there.
Right.
So it's like the whole, like, guess and check. So it's the penitent man shall pass. Then Indy's like, a penitent man, he's trying to figure it out, a penitent man. It's like, a penitent man, and he'll say ducks, and then the blade goes right over his head.
Right.
Which, it's funny that, like, it's like this ancient tomb, but they have metal blades that are, like, coming out from the walls and stuff.
Makes for a good movie.
It does. So he gets by. So then he has the second task, which I don't remember the exact wording for it. It's on, like, in the name of God, walk in the name of God, or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So then he has to step from each specific word, spelling out God or something and whatever in Latin.
Well, I think it was Yahweh
or Jehovah or
Jehovah or Yahweh or something. But then I guess it in one language it starts with one letter.
Yeah.
So he steps on the wrong letter, and then long story short, he gets through the whole maze of things.
Yeah. Well, then we have to do the leap from the lion's head, which I think was such a cool effect for back in the day, right? It's take a leap from right where he's standing. It looks like there's nothing.
Right.
But then he takes a step, and the camera kind of turns, and you see that it just looks like there's nothing there. There's a full pathway there.
Right.
It's like a trick of the eye kind of thing, which is, it's obviously CGI. There's not over a chasm, but that was a really cool effect that they did. Which, this movie was, 89?
Well, let's see. The
89?
First one was 81, then 84, so yeah, probably 87 to 89, I would think.
Let me see. I got it right here. 89, which is funny because it seems older than it is. It's only 5 years older than I am.
No. 5, is it?
Yeah, 89. I was 94.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's not much older than I am.
Yeah.
But it just feels like it. Well, I think what the thing is, they shot the same style for all 3 movies. So this movie was shot in the same style as 1981.
Right.
So it looks, I think, back like an 81 kind of thing. But yes, and he takes the lead from the lion's head, which is where he goes in, and this is the scene that I have as our background. The Grail room with the knight that's been sitting there guarding the Grail.
That's right.
Which I think is funny that
900 years old or something.
Yeah. He goes to fight Indy and just falls over. Then he's just like, you bested me in combat. You get a chance to choose the Grail. Which Indy never did anything.
But then Schneider and the other guy I
don't remember his name right now.
The guy that hired him originally, the antiquities hunter, they both show up at the same time.
Walter Donovan.
Yeah.
Yeah. They show up, and he's going to go find the Grail, which Schneider knew what she was doing. She said, I'll choose for you. Because she purposely chose the wrong one. Because she didn't like that this guy was burning books and a Nazi and only wanted it for the purposes she didn't want it for.
Right.
So she chooses the fanciest Grail of all of them.
And the idea is if you drink from the cup of the Grail, you have eternal life.
From the right one, you get eternal life. From the wrong one, you die.
Right.
It takes life from you.
So they pick the most ornate chalice there, and he takes a drink, and then we have a traditional, face melting, skull melting.
It was
scene.
it was horrific. It's like it's still kind of like I remember it scared me when I saw it when I was younger, but it still kind of freaks you out a little bit when he's aging really fast, he's falling apart, and then his bones get shot back and disintegrated.
Yep.
And then so Indy goes,
and there's the room there on the screen behind us.
Exactly.
I guess here
we're in the room right now.
Yes.
It's taking place right behind us. So Indy goes to choose.
But the great is the who's the soldier that's there, right? The knight, one of the 3 bravest knights. He says after the guy's face melts, he goes, "He chose poorly."
Yeah, just super nonchalant about it. Just
right.
like he chose poorly. And then Indy goes, and he chooses a very modest cup.
Yeah, I think he says he chooses the most modest because a carpenter would have. This is what a carpenter would have made.
Yeah.
And Jesus being a carpenter.
Yeah. So he drinks, and it's the right cup. But then there's the catch of this whole thing is that you can stay here and drink out of the Grail, but the Grail can't leave the building.
Right.
So you can stay here and live forever, which is such a funny catch. Like, why would you want to live forever if you have to stay in that room for the rest of forever? So it's an interesting thing, like a rule. So he fills up with enough water, he heads back out, saves his dad.
Yep.
But then that's when the Nazis step back in, and they want the Grail. So Schneider gets it.
Yep.
And she's like, we can do, this is ours now. So she goes to leave, but she can't step over the seal.
You can't leave it, yes.
Yeah. So that's when the whole building, classic Indiana Jones style, the floor starts to crumble, everything's kind of awkward. So then she drops it, and so now she's hanging off the edge, and Indy's like, you have to let go, and she can reach it. She's right there.
Does she save herself, or does she try to get the Grail?
Which she chooses herself.
She chooses to get the Grail.
Yeah.
And then she falls and dies.
Yeah. And then that's when Indy slips, and now which is another Lord of the Rings reference. It's kind of like the ring, no matter how, it's like he's drawn to it. He's like,
yes.
Even though he was just saying it's not worth it to her, 6 seconds later, now he's like, but I can get it. I can get it. He's like touching it. It's like, it's right there. And that's when his dad's like, let it go.
Right.
And then that's when it kind of snaps him out of it, and they get out of there.
That's right.
But no one else makes it out. It's just the 4, it's Brody.
Yes, and the Grail is now buried forever.
Gone, yes. In the building. Gone. And then we get that cool shot, though, I think, of the knight as he's staying there and the building's crumbling, and you just see him standing there as the whole building comes down around him. And then that's kind of the end of the movie. We get outside.
Well, it's typical, a typical ending, right? Just like in movie number 1, where the Ark of the Covenant is just stashed away forever, never to be seen or found again, right? The Holy Grail is just buried forever, and that's it.
And it's the idea that they keep going over of like greed in the end is like, will basically get you. Everyone who got greedy with these artifacts dies.
Right.
So it's let it go. These are pieces of history.
Yes. Well, in Indiana Jones movies, it's like, cartoons or anything else. The bad guys die, and the good guys always live.
Yeah. They live. There's a message at the end of the movie.
Yes.
Stay true to yourself and all that jazz. And then they have a fun scene where Salah's like, why do you keep calling him Junior? Like, what is this Junior? And he's like, well, Henry Jones Jr. It's like, we named the dog Indiana. That's when you learn that he took the name Indiana, but that was the dog's name when he was growing up. Yeah, I think that was a fun, like, little...
Yep.
His name was not Indiana Jones. And they have a great scene where... Also, we forgot to talk about, because this kind of ties in, there's a scene where Indy's like, when they're tied up in the Nazi castle, like, we have to get out of here. And the dad's like, I thought you said Brody had it. Like, we'll keep it safe. And Indy's like, he got lost in his own museum.
That's right.
So
That's
then,
right.
Brody's like, at the end of the movie, he's like, let's go, kicks off the horse and falls off the horse, and the horse keeps running, and Dad's like, lost his own museum, huh?
And then we forgot a couple of scenes that were classic Indiana Jones. There was in the university when he's the professor and he goes to do his office hours in his office, and there's 9 million students there.
This was interesting though, because in the first one you think he's so on top of his duties. In this one, she's like, term papers have not been graded yet. Here are all your messages. Here's all this stuff. And everyone has all these questions. And he's like, I'll get to everyone in turn.
But the point being, he's just a professor.
Yeah.
Right?
He's just a normal guy.
He's a working class, college professor. But then he goes off onto these adventures.
Yeah. Which was a fun, kind of like that. We were talking about, is he a superhero? He's got his day persona where he's a professor, and then the night persona where he's that hero archaeologist. Yeah.
Clark Kent is a newspaper reporter, but a superhero by night. Yeah. Right? Indiana Jones is a college professor, but really, a superhero.
Yes, and there's a bunch of other great scenes in this movie. I mean, this movie's just
a fabulous
fantastic.
movie.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous movie. Did it win any Academy Awards?
I can check on that.
I mean, I know Raiders of the Lost Ark was actually up for an Academy Award, didn't win.
No, it won
for Best Picture. Didn't win.
It didn't win for Best Picture. No.
But did 3 do anything? Because I thought one of the most entertaining of movies. I mean, really, this is the sequel. 2 was not the sequel. Temple of Doom was not the sequel.
Yeah, it won an award and was up for 3. So it won Best Effects and Sound Effects Editing. It was nominated for Best Sound and nominated for Best Score, but it only won the Best Effects and Best Sound Editing Effects.
Okay.
So it won the one. So I think they all were nominated and at least won one. All the original 3.
Yes.
I think the 4th one's the only one to not be nominated for anything, which we'll get into that in the next episode. But yeah, I mean, I think you made that claim that you at the end of the last week's episode that you liked this one more the best.
Well, it was just the most well done. I mean, the first one was introducing us to everything and exciting and original, but this one had no downtime, no dead periods, more chases, more. It basically took from one the best of the best and used the best stuff, and like in one, with Marion Ravenwood and stuff, there was a lot of this. Relationship, love story thing. They kind of cut that stuff out of 3 pretty much. I mean, there was Schneider, but it wasn't overplayed.
Not a love interest, like halfway through.
Yeah, it wasn't overplayed.
Yeah.
And then, just the addition of Sean Connery, River Phoenix as being young Indiana Jones. It was the whole package. So
yeah, I think watching it again this week, I think I understood more, and I think I agree a little bit more. I'd say for me, the first and second are equal. I think you can't compare them. Because they're the same idea, but done so differently.
Yes.
But they're both so good. And the second one is obviously still a fantastic movie, just different.
I heard when you guys did the show on Shrek, and what you guys talked about was Shrek 2 and how fantastic it was.
The best one.
I mean, Indiana Jones The Last Crusade, which was 3, was really 2.
It definitely felt
it was the sequel to 1.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and Temple Doom was not the sequel to 1. It was just some other Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, that was like a spin-off almost.
Yeah, that was like a spin-off.
Series, yeah.
This was actually the sequel, and it was very well done. It tied together the best parts of 1. It used all the best stuff, and it really did a fantastic job. It was called The Last Crusade, so you sort of assume that was the last one, but it wasn't.
It should have been. I think it ended so beautifully. It wrapped everything up so nicely. I mean, obviously money is the reason they did a 4th. Right. There's no doubt. It was money.
Well, and people were asking for more.
But so long after? It doesn't make sense. But we'll get more on that next week. But I think this one was definitely phenomenal. I think it had everything you wanted from an Indiana Jones movie, which is exactly like what we were saying. This everyone wanted was just this movie. Do you remember seeing this in theaters at all? In 1989?
I do.
Okay.
Yep. I do remember seeing it in theaters. I do remember it, and I've seen it a number of times since then, because like I said, this is the kind of one you could watch over and over again.
Yeah, which is really stinks, because like you said, you don't watch movies over and over again. It's hard to get you to watch anything twice.
Even when I watched it the other day, just preparing for our show today, there were things I'm like, oh, either I didn't remember that, or did I even see that at that time, or did I catch that? I mean, it's the kind of thing you could watch again and see different things. And
like you said, little things in the background, especially when you're in his house. There's little like nods to the past 2 movies and little things here and there. I liked, this was a whole complete movie. This could have been one movie on its own. This had a great arc from young Indy to the end of what could have been series. Like, they did a good job of bringing a full arc all the way around. So, I mean, I think it's fantastic. Easily, I think, tied for my favorite with the first one. And like you said, Sean Connery coming in, I think, was that perfect little thing that needed to push it right over the edge to make it
I'll give it 9.9 comicallys. Oh, we're not doing that anymore?
We're not doing that anymore, no.
Okay.
We're a different show here now.
Okay.
I do appreciate you wearing comically incompetent colors, though.
I did. I wore this because it was good. I didn't dress up like Indiana Jones this time.
You didn't? No, I noticed that.
No, but which isn't quite as fun. But I did wear the comically colors, as you can. Oh, wow, what was that? The comically colors, as you can see here, as I knock things over in Doug's house.
But I think that about wraps up our Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Sonic, you mind if I move into the beer now?
Yeah, please do.
So this week we're doing a beer from Mikkeller Brewing. So this is different. We had Mikkeller on before, but what they did is it's a European brewery, but they opened a brewery in San Diego, California. And this is from their website. Mikkeller Brewing San Diego is a brand new, deeply rooted in the friendship of two world-renowned breweries. The vision is to merge the best craft beer traditions of Europe and Southern California while employing a curiosity and new exploring the boundaries for modern beer brewing. So it's a European-style beer mixed with a California IPA-style beer. It's a New England-style IPA. It is 7% alcohol by volume, and the hops that they use are Amarillo, Nelson, and then one I cannot pronounce and will not even try.
Hallertau Blanc.
Yeah, there you go. Which I think that's the mix. That's like a European hop that I've never had before. And Amarillo and Nelson are both very common hops in beer in the U.S. And also, like, just it works perfectly with the show that we're doing today. But fantastic beer.
Looks like they have a website called Mikkeller, MIKKELLERSD.com. If you're interested in getting it. It was really tasty. It was good.
Yeah, for Mikkeller San Diego, they have their own website separately from Mikkeller Brewing, which is the European one. Yeah, I mean, fantastic beer.
So a New England style IPA, and although it's not a hazy, it wasn't very hoppy. So
no, it was actually very light, which I was, a little confused by, which I just didn't expect. So they have a few different locations for the brewery. The San Diego one looks really cool. And they have a lot of fantastic beers. Do Stuff Together is the one that we're doing today. We had one on the show from them called Staff Magician for the Doctor Strange episode for the movie. So if you want to go back and watch that one, listen to that beer. That was really good.
Look at that one, a blueberry pecan.
Yeah, they definitely do a lot of things that I've never seen before. They definitely go out of their way to make stuff.
And one bourbon barrel aged. Good stuff.
Yeah. Hard seltzers. They have a little bit of everything. A coffee stout, barley wine. So they kind of go all over the map. I highly recommend Mikkeller Brewing. If you live in Southern California, they seem to be pretty easy to get. I got mine at just a local liquor store. So highly recommend checking them out. And yeah, I think that about wraps up our Indiana Jones. I want to say
last Crusade, but not the last one.
Not the last one. We got one more. But we'll talk more about that next week. So is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap out?
No, I think I'm good. I enjoyed that, and I look forward to the painful discussion on Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, or what is it called?
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull next week.
Yeah, I have a bit of a harsh beer for that one, so we'll see what the audience thinks of that. Before we wrap out, though, remember we are on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us there if you want updates on the show. We're on YouTube and everywhere you get podcasts. New episodes every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, yeah, check us out if you want. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.